we need to do is build an economy, not build bumper stickers.
Mr. Pontieri, your view on housing in the Four Corners area?
Well, I think I said earlier, it is extremely important that we create that amount of foot traffic on Main Street, that we redevelop that corner. The studies have proven it. The studies have said it. Mr. Evans made the comment about housing and the housing market and how it's collapsed. The one housing market that hasn't collapsed is quality luxury rentals. With that come people, with that comes expendable money, with that comes $6 million worth of disposable income into the area. It creates jobs, as Mr. Evans had indicated, is needed. It creates jobs, it creates money for our downtown.
Mrs. LaGuardia, your view on the topic?
Well, we've seen in the past what luxury living has brought to Patchogue, and it really hasn't been pretty. If you look at the Tiffany Apartments, that's how that project was built back in the day. And I also believe that on our Main Street, we really need to build more business. Mr. Pontieri mentioned that it's bringing 40,000 square feet of retail, which is a reduction from 60,000 square feet of retail. And there hasn't been 1 square foot of additional office space brought to that plan. I think there's a lot of issues with the current Tri-Tech plan. I think the community agrees with that. We have a lot of opportunity to improve on this plan. Housing in general has been an issue in Patchogue since I've moved in, and I think for generations before I moved in. We haven't solved the problems that have existed before, and we're layering on new problems on top of that. So I think we need to really go back and take a cold, hard look at our situation and figure out how we're going to move forward in the most profitable way for not the developer, but for the village.
Mr. Evans, 30 seconds on a rebuttal.
Well, I think what we need to do is, if we just throw up a big building, guys, it's going to just be a big building of empty storefronts again. We replaced the facade on many of our buildings. They're still empty. We have to make an environment that motivates investment. And there's many ways to do this. Having a park, having foot traffic, sure, but we need more than that. We have a whole district, we have a whole village of problems, and it won't be solved by just 291 apartments and that football. I promise you that.
Mr. Pontieri, can you rebuttal?
When you look at the downtown, and you look at the fact that there's been $150 million worth of investment in our community, we talk about the downtown has transitioned itself into an entertainment and arts center. And even with that transition, all we have are restaurants right now. There's a reason that we don't have that additional quality retail that we look for. We have Blum's, does a great job. 85 years now. Stanley's, Richard York. They've managed to survive. The other empty spaces will not be full until the Four Corners, and that area is filled with people.
Mrs. McGuire, any rebuttal?
I don't think housing is the answer. I think that we need to drive business on Main Street. We need more commercial and industrial space. We need service-based businesses that can really drive feet on the street during the day. Housing is not going to drive daytime foot traffic on Main Street unless these people are unemployed. It's just a fact of the matter. I'm sorry.
We'll stay within the downtown area and move to a place that does attract people, the Patchogue Theater. Throughout the campaign, there's been some discussion on what the village's role should be with the theater going forward. Mr. Pontieri, I'll start with you. How do you see the village continuing to play a role with the theater?
Well, there are a number of issues that you deal with when you talk about the theater. You start out with saying that in 2003, they did 55 to 60,000 people went through the doors. This coming year, it will be about 140,000 people. So, Long Island Press declared them the finest and the best on Long Island. There's a piece I keep hearing that this thing needs to become a professional theater, be run by a professional organization. The problem you have with that, and when you do your research, you find it out. More than 10% of the income of that theater goes to a private investor. You lose your tax-free bond status. The theater board would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars extra in interest rates. The theater board has done a tremendous job of making that happen. Whether it's the South Ocean Avenue Middle School graduation, whether it's what Gateway does for the 60 shows a year that they do, Roland Cunning, who was here a couple of weeks back, that theater covers its expenses. We pay the debt service. The village, it's a village's building, and I would not want to see it turned over to somebody else who could ruin the gem that we have.
Mrs. LaGuardia, your view on how the village should continue its goal with the theater?
Well, I ran Mr. Panieri's mayoral campaign in 2004, and at that time we were in alignment that the theater needed professional management. So for him to say now that he's surprised to hear people saying that it needs more professional management is surprising to me. However, I haven't heard anyone say that it needs to be privately owned, but professionally run. And that's a distinction. If you look at the Schubert Theater in Connecticut, that's a true hybrid model. It's a theater that's owned by a municipality. It's professionally run, but there's very dedicated volunteers that work at it. I think we have a gem of a theater under the Keegan administration. I myself worked very hard to renovate the theater. I personally went into the city and helped pull seats from the Imperial Theater to move them out here to Patchogue. I feel very close to the theater, and I appreciate all of the hard work of the volunteers. I think it's something that we need to consider and work hard to make sure that that theater is fully utilized, which it is not currently.
Mr. Evans, your view on the theater and the village's role?
Well, the theater gives us a grab on our roots, what made us great, the culture and arts. And still you see it to this day with people like the Beckermans building something great. But it could also be better. We could bring larger revenue by not reinventing the wheel, but you hear people speaking of Huntington, for instance, places where they get larger acts. Maybe looking into what they do that's more successful would be something. It's not rocket science. If they're doing it and it's working, let's see what it is. Let's bring them here. We have more to offer. We got a train. We got highway systems. We have more to offer. We have Paravel. And they get a cup of coffee at the roast afterwards. So we need to start bringing up better venues, but still embracing the small theater that it brings our community together. Even at times when it doesn't make a lot of money. We can let the larger revenues make the money. But the theater is something that needs to be a core of the art community.
Mr. Panieri, 30 seconds on a rebuttal.
You know, you bring up the Huntington Theater. If anybody read the paper 2 weeks ago, that's more than the organization. The number of people that were arrested after they were getting short on money. So what did they do? They filled it up with a rock band and some sort of drinking contest. And it was a disaster. The town of Huntington does not have control over that facility. It's our facility. It's the village of Patchogue's building. To give it to a private enterprise to run, I think is a big mistake. Ms. McGuire talked about 2003, 2004 election. What we talked about was making the theater prosper. The theater pays for itself and it's prospering.
Mrs. McGuire, 30-second rebuttal.
We did never talk about professional ownership. We talked about professional management. So I think that's a strong distinction to make. I know because we worked very closely on that issue together. I think, we looked at a period between March and January on Friday and Saturday nights. Take away live in the lobby or dance studio or school performances. There were 35 Friday and Saturday nights where the main stage of our theater was full. And I don't find that acceptable. I don't like to pass our theater on a Friday or Saturday night and see it dark for all intents and purposes. I think it's the economic engine of our downtown. It's the reason why a lot of restaurants have come in the first place. And I think it's the reason why a hotel would survive if we do bring a hotel here. So I think we need to make the most of it.
Mr. Evans, 30 seconds.
Well, number one, a hotel won't survive. We don't have a theater there, and it needs to do better. It's great. It needs to do better. But a hotel won't come. No, it won't. You see, what's happening now is the reason why nothing gets done. We can't even come to agreement on something like the theater. Let's just make it better. It doesn't need to be privately owned. It just needs to be run well. That's all. It doesn't need to be this political talk about who's doing what. It needs to bring in money. That's all. If someone's doing it better, let's see why it's better, and let's work like that. That's all. It's very simple.
We'll move on to our next question. As with any downtown area on Long Island, the need to attract business and new business is always key. Mrs. McGuire, we'll start with you. As mayor, what would you do to attract more businesses and more merchants to the downtown area?
Well, I work in the business community already. As down here, it's Mouthpiece and Show. I go into the city quite often. I take the train. I don't hang out the window necessarily, but I do go into the city, and I have relationships with a lot of the major retailers across the country, and I know how to negotiate with them, and I know, what their demographics concerns are. I know what drives their marketing needs, and I think that I could be a huge asset to this village in terms of bringing business to the Main Street. I don't think we've been proactive enough with business. I think we've been very proactive with the housing developers, but we've reached our saturation point with housing. We have enough people. Now we need more business, and I think that I'm the person to help make that happen.
Mr. Evans, as mayor, what would you do to bring more business to downtown?
Number one, we got to start an aggressive advertising campaign. Come to Patchogue, the way a place like California does. Let everyone know we're open for business. Merchants and people that are coming to shop. Number two, I spoke with the people at TriTech. They said they did it in other places. When they were brought to the table, we could possibly ask them to make an investment. It's not going to be our taxpayer money, it's their money. A small business fund where people want to come and open a business where they can't get capital anywhere else. Guess where you get it? Right here in Patchogue. At low interest, no interest, and a grant program set up. I feel so strong about that if elected mayor, I will donate my salary to the small business fund.
Mr. Pontieri, bringing business to the downtown?
In 2004, I don't know how many of you would have walked down the streets in 2001, 2, and 3 at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night on Main Street. You can walk down Main Street any time, any night of the week, during the week. You have to figure out how to take care of the daytime. And I hate to keep banging the same drum. And people keep saying, well, if you bring in business, people will show up. Business shows up when people show up. The reason the restaurants prosper is people are there. The 140,000, 150,000. When Public House opened up, they asked me, are we going to make money here? I said, listen, you can put 75,000 people going to pay you something in the back door. You have to have a quality product inside, and they've done that. They've done a nice job. You can see with the other restaurants. So it really is. It's about how do you put people from downtown and make them prosper. And I'll come back to it again. You need to. The world has changed since we grew up, and the world has changed over the last 8 years. Home ownership is not what home ownership was even 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Rentals is where we have to go. Bring people to town. Thank you.
Mrs. McGuire, 22nd rebuttal.
Well, I would like to just give credit where credit is due. I mean, I think that in the last 8 years, the board, not just Mayor Pontieri, and the BID and the Chamber of Commerce have all contributed a lot to our downtown. Trustee Jerry Crean, who's the Commissioner of Economic Development, brought roast to town. He did a lot of he made a lot of wonderful achievements, as did the entire board. And I think that we need to give credit where credit is due, and also acknowledge that the theater and our sewer district is what has attracted businesses to Main Street.
Mr. Evans?
Well, obviously not enough businesses. Because when you walk down Main Street, you see a lot of vacancies. And before we pat each other on the back about the great things we've done, the job's not there. We need to put businesses in these empty storefronts. It needs to motivate. What's going to motivate? Why should you come to Patchogue and open a business? I come from a family of small business, worked at pizzerias my whole life. I know the reasons you go to certain areas. Why open it here? Not Port Jefferson, not Huntington. You have to give a reason. And it's not only going to be the footwork, because what you'll do is the chicken and the egg. We need to have an environment that motivates small business. Let's not turn our back on it. Small business and jobs.
Mr. Pontieri, 30 seconds.
Yeah, it just really comes down to people. And Ms. McGuire is correct. We worked as a total board to make things happen in this village. It just didn't happen to Paul Pontieri's that day. It happened there because there were 7 people. They read off the same sheet of paper and made some very tough decisions, but made good decisions. Whether it was art space, which has turned into an entertainment and arts venue, along with the Patchogue Theater, along with Copper Beach. They have made what downtown prospers where it's at now. But it's hit a plateau. We need to take the next step.
Thank you. Our next question is going to change topics a little bit. Patchogue